Hello, everyone. Ladislas Moise of the Wandering Investors. So today we'll be discussing how to obtain residency in Ecuador because it's an underappreciated country in Latin America. So we'll be having this conversation together with Sara, who's an attorney in Ecuador and who specializes in helping people move to Ecuador. Sara, how are you?
No, I'm fine. Thank you for asking, and thank you very much for inviting me to this interview.
Cool. So there's a number of ways to obtain residency in Ecuador. It's actually one of the easier countries in Latin America to obtain residency in. Apart from the usual marriage or having a kid there, etc. What are the main ways to obtain residency in Ecuador?
About the residency visa in Ecuador, the first thing that I would like to explain is that everybody who wants to apply for a visa, they will apply for a temporary residency visa. This visa is valid for 2 years, 24 months. And these people, as long comply with the requirements of their temporary residency visa, can go from temporary to permanent. So that means that as long you comply with the requirements, with the conditions, you can be a permanent residency visa that is a visa valid for lifetime. The main visas that we have in Ecuador are five. So retire visa is the first one, investor, professional, a nomad digital visa, and the last one that is rentista visa. So I will explain each of them. So it is important that everybody understand that it requires and the amounts of money that you need to submit is for this year 2025. I make emphasis on this because each year Ecuador increase a little bit the investment or the requires income for you can apply for a visa. First step is investor visa. So there are two ways to investment in Ecuador. The first one is investment in real estate. You need to buy a property in Ecuador, and the minimum investment that you need to make for this property is $47,000. And the property should be under your name. The second way to investment in Ecuador is investment in Ecuadorian bank. So for this reason, you need to open a bank account in Ecuador, and the minimum investment that you need to make this year, 2025, is $47,000 in a bank certificate of deposit. So also the people who invest in Ecuador can bring their dependents, their spouses, their children, as long investment $500 per dependent.
So the dependents, spouse, children, what about the parents on both sides? Can they also be included?
No, that's the reason I don't name them. Because when you are a temporary resident, you only can be dependent visas to your spouse or your children. It's only when you are permanent, you can give dependent to your grandparents, to your
Okay.
parents, to your different people. But with temporary, we have restrictions.
Okay, so you can come in with your spouse, your children, get to permanent, and then you can bring the parents a few years later.
Exactly. Really, that is what I do with my clients. After 2 years, we can bring more people, more dependents. The second category is pensioner visa. This is for the people who have a pension guarantee for lifetime. The minimum amount of money is $1,450 for the main applicant, plus $250 per dependent. So the third category is professional visa. For this kind of visa, you need to have a university degree, bachelor, master, or PhD. So if you are a professional, you have a university degree, you can register your degree in Ecuador and apply for your professional visa. And the next category is nomad digital visa. For this visa is kind of new in the law. However, you need to have a digital work guarantee for a minimum of 2 years. So, and the minimum salary that you need to make monthly is $1,410. And the last category is rentista visa. For this kind of visa is for the people who will have an income guarantee for the next 2 years. For example, you can rent a property, you can receive an income, $1,410, and you can apply for a visa in Ecuador. For any of these categories, investor visa, a professional visa, pensioner visa, nomad digital visa, rentista visa, you must show your background checks from the country that you live the last 5 years. And if your country is in the agreement of the apostille, all your documents must to have an apostille before you come to Ecuador to apply for your visa.
So we're talking birth certificate, criminal background check, marriage certificate, all of that with apostille, if possible.
Yes, one very important detail, Ecuador doesn't require the birth certificate. So for the temporary or permanent. So birth certificate is only requirement in the case that you are bringing your children with you.
Okay.
But if you're applying by yourself, no, you don't need to bring.
And the digital nomad visa is also considered temporary residency. One can work towards permanent residency with it.
Yes, with all the temporary residency visas, you have the same benefit that you can migrate from temporary to permanent as long you comply with the requirement to stay in the country. Your visa is valid for 24 months. However, to apply for your temporary, you can do that from the 21 month as long you stay in the country most of the time. Only you could be outside of Ecuador a maximum 90 days. So 90 days and 24-month period.
Okay, so really to be able to get to permanent residency, you need to spend a lot of time in Ecuador, and you're just allowed 6 weeks a year to go back home and see family or to go on business. So essentially, you do this, you get to permanent residency. Now, what are the minimum physical presence requirements once you have permanent residency in Ecuador?
At the moment that you are a permanent resident, I think the things are easy. You could be outside of Ecuador a maximum 180 days. It's like 6 months in Ecuador, 6 months outside of Ecuador in any other country. This requirement is enforced for the first 2 years of your permanent residency visa. So the first year, no more than 180 days. The second year, no more than 180 days. However, from the third year of your permanent residency visa, you could be outside a maximum of 2 years in the same period of trip.
Okay, so just one day in Ecuador every 2 years once you've done essentially 4 years of living in Ecuador.
Yes, absolutely works that way.
And applying for citizenship?
Applying for Ecuador citizenship, the things are a little different. So, because at the moment that you are a permanent resident, the immigration law explains that you can apply for your Ecuadorian citizenship from the third year, as long you stay in the country most of the time. So the maximum period of time that you could be outside of Ecuador is 180 days at any time. That means the first year, the second year, the third year. So you cannot leave the 2 years because the 2 years is for you keep your permanent residency visa. So, and also it is important that you know to apply the Ecuadorian citizenship, first is the time, 3 years as a permanent resident. Second, that you cannot leave Ecuador more than 180 days. And third, you need to qualify with a financial requirement. So because you need to prove that you investment here, that you live here, that you have income in Ecuador.
So 180 days per year or in total in these 3 years?
For a year.
Per year. And
Mhm.
does Ecuador actually grant citizenship to foreigners, like relatively easily, and how long does the processing time take?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Ecuador, as long you comply with the requirements, you have the right to apply for your Ecuador citizenship, and that will be issued for you. And honestly, at the moment that you are senior, 65 years or more, the requirements are easy. So, because we have here a test, a Spanish test about the geography history about Ecuador. However, the people who is 65, they don't give this test. So they automatically eliminate that test and they go for the second step. Regarding the Spanish test is also easy.
I
The
mean,
most important question is that you need to answer why you want to be Ecuadorian.
yeah, I mean, you should at least speak Spanish after a few years of living full time in Ecuador, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Yes.
What's the processing time roughly between applying for citizenship and actually getting it?
In my experience, the process can take around like 2, maximum 3 years.
Okay. And during that time, can you be away or are they still monitoring for you to be in the country?
You can leave Ecuador, for trip, for business, whatever. However, you cannot be more than 180 days outside. So the require of this time is very important. Also, another important information is that if you are married with an Ecuadorian citizenship, you can apply because also you are married with your spouse. Yeah. If you are married 2 years with your spouse, you can apply for your Ecuadorian citizenship. You don't need to give tests, and your Ecuadorian citizenship can be issued in 3 to 6 months.
All right, so I guess it's high time to get married to an Ecuadorian.
That could be a good option.
Cool. And to people who are considering obtaining residency in Ecuador, a lot of people are very wary of all the gang violence they hear about. Like, is this actually an impediment? Is it everywhere in the country, or are some areas really fine? Can you give us a bit of feedback because you deal with a lot of foreigners getting residency on a regular basis. How are they living through it?
Yes, and thank you for that question. In my experience as an Ecuadorian in working with foreigners for the last 12 years, always my advice is to avoid the areas that is qualified as a risk. So usually this is the north close to Colombia, especially in the beach, honestly. And I can name the province is Esmeraldas. So this is like could be little danger. The rest of the country is really peaceful. I am in the city of Cuenca. It's a really tranquil city. We don't have any problem here. Most of my clients stay in Cuenca or Quito, some other areas, the beach, Salinas also. It is a good city to be there.
Yeah, I can confirm. I spent some time in Cuenca like 2, 3 years ago. I bought an apartment there together with a relative, and I remember walking around at like 3 in the morning. It's totally safe, no issue. But going to the coast in Guayaquil and just even in the middle of the afternoon, just feeling not comfortable at all walking around there. So there are big variations in the country, and if you choose the right spots, it's generally okay. So yeah, look, this is interesting. Ecuador is not discussed much, but it's pretty easy to get residency. There is a path to citizenship if you're willing to spend the time there. And also it can be a bit of a plan B if the rules don't change, in the sense that you can just make a deposit, 45, $7,000, whatever, in a bank. You get a 2-year residency and you just need to come back every 2 years to renew. You won't work towards permanent residency, but you can at least have an active residency permit that requires one trip every 2 years to keep active. That doesn't block a lot of money. You're getting paid some half decent interest. Interest in banks around 5, 6% or so. So that's also an option for people who want an active residency but don't have enough to get, a permanent residency in a place like Panama, which requires more work, et cetera, or more money. So it's a decent option.
Yeah, one important information too. Another one is that with the temporary residency visa too, you can come and live as you please if you don't want to apply for the permanent. So really, Ecuador give you these two wonderful options. One that you can come and live as you please as a temporary resident for 2 years, or only if you want. If you choose to be a permanent resident, that is when you need to stay this period of time in the country. This at least 21 months and only could be outside 90 days.
Fantastic. So if you want to find out more about how to obtain residency in Ecuador, there's a link below with a lot more information, and you can also get in touch with Sarah this way. Sarah, thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure. So have a wonderful day.
Make sure to download my free ebook, 12 Mistakes to Avoid When Investing in International Real Estate, which you can find on my website, link below. And feel free to follow me on Instagram @TheWandering Investor. I look forward to hearing from you.